Hello everyone, good afternoon. For those watching online in Japan or Australia or elsewhere in Asia, good evening. It's a lovely sunny day here in Washington. And I'm Michael Green. I'm Senior Vice President for Asia and Japan Chair at CSIS and Professor and Director of Asian Studies at Georgetown University. And we have one of the School of Foreign Service alums of distinction speaking to us today. Mr. Atsuo Suzuki, Commissioner of Japan's Acquisition Technology Logistics Agency, ATLA, in Japan's Ministry of Defense, and a graduate of the Security Studies program at Georgetown. His senpai is battling right now in Tokyo to be the next leader of Japan, Kono Taro, also from Georgetown. As you all know, ATLA plays a critical role in shaping Japan's defense procurement, R&D policies, and we have a unique opportunity today to hear about ATLA's strategic priorities and the potential for us to further strengthen defense, industrial, and technology cooperation between the United States and Japan. We're broadcasting this live on the CSIS website. We have a small, distinguished audience here with us live. You can submit questions online if you're watching this online, and I will get them by text from our staff. And people in the audience, when Commissioner Suzuki's done, raise your hand and I'll call on a few people in the audience as well. We'll do a hybrid event. So Suzuki-san became the Commissioner of ATLA in July of 2021. He's had all the key posts in the Defense Ministry in his 36 years of service, including Director General of the Bureau for Defense Build-Up Planning, the Administrative Vice Chief of Staff to the Joint Staff, Deputy Secretary General of Defense Policy Bureau, and his first job in the ministry was actually in the procurement office, so he's returning to his roots in MOD. Suzuki-san's a graduate of Waseda, and as I said, mentioned earlier, he received his master's at Georgetown and was a fellow at the National Defense University. So I'll invite Mr. Suzuki up to the stage, and then I'll join him for a brief discussion and then turn to the audience here live and online for questions. Suzuki-san, welcome. Thank you very much.
So, thank you, Dr. Green and Dr. Hamre. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I am Suzuki Atsuo, Commissioner of Acquisition Technology and Logistics Agency. Thank you for giving me this kind of precious opportunity. It's 5 p.m. here in DC, so it is now 6 a.m. in Tokyo. Live streaming of this kind of events may have been common even before the COVID-19 pandemic. But if there is any benefit we get from this pandemic, it would be the widespread use of online events where people across the Pacific can immediately gather and interact online, like today. A circumstance introduces our new style of business, and it cannot be on hand without investing and developing to suitable equipment or technology in a timely manner. Equipment we require for meeting used to be good furniture and coffee. We still need them, but now added large flat screen, secure network, microphone, and camera in our office. I'm not a salesperson from Sony, but that has some commonality to the idea I'd like to convey today. As some of you may recall, last year on January 14th, former Defense Minister Kono Taro delivered a speech here at CSIS and spoke about China's military expansion and its growing activities in the East and South China Seas, and how Japan's defense posture has evolved over the years in response to these developments. In his speech, Mr. Kono also talked about China's pursuit to invest globally in infrastructure through the Belt and Road initiatives and the country's use of debt trap diplomacy. In doing so, he stressed the importance of universal values such as freedom and democracy, and on the need for like-minded countries, including in that of Southeast Asia and the Pacific Islands, to work together in upholding these values. Almost 2 years have passed since Minister Kono's speech, and since then, the world has changed drastically. COVID-19 forced us to focus our resources and energies into tackling the pandemic, and thereby limiting engagement in international exchanges. Meanwhile, we learn the hard way of the risk incurred when depending heavily on a certain country for the supply of critical medical goods. The alliance between Japan and the United States has remained strong and developed even further while during the pandemic. Earlier this year, in March, Secretary of State Blinken and the Defense Secretary Austin visited Japan as their first in-person and cabinet-level trip under the new Biden administration for the inaugural 2+2 with Foreign Minister Motegi and the Defense Minister Kishi. At this meeting, the four ministers agreed to convene another 2+2 within the year. Given that the 2+2 has always been a biennial meeting, having two meetings in a year is tangible proof that the alliance is moving forward. I expect the next 2+2 to be another great opportunity to further coordinate our efforts to ensure for free and open Indo-Pacific region. Along with the aforementioned topics, another important issues that I think we should address at the next 2+2 is economic statecraft and how we can better cooperate in this area. Over the course of a year and 9 months dealing with COVID-19, it became increasingly apparent to not only experts but also to the average person that economic activity, even if it's purely academic research, cannot be carried out without considering implications on defense and security. The alliance is a key to ensuring security cooperation between Japan and the US. Our two countries should also be coordinating policies for economic security as well. To this end, I'd like to take this opportunity to discuss about our agency, Acquisition Technology and Logistics Agency, ATLA, and the work that we do in the advancement of defense technology management, Japan's defense industrial base, and in the area related to economic statecraft. Well, so much has already been said on China, so I won't elaborate, but I do want to point out that for the past few decades, China has been one of the world's largest investors in research and development, including in the private sector. Based on their Thousand Talents Plan, China by 2018 recruited 8,000 scientists and engineers from overseas to work in areas of innovation and technological research by offering benefits such as high pay and various privileges. China has also been suspected for engaging in technology theft through unlawful means such as cyber attacks, economic espionage, and illegal technology transfer through the creation of joint ventures. By continuing to invest in R&D over the years, China has emerged as a high-tech powerhouse, as seen in China's mega IT industry, equivalent to that of GAFA or GAFAM. China has become the world's second largest shipbuilding industry and has made gains in manufacturing large-scale machineries and in the aerospace industry. Based on the strategy of military-civil fusion, the Chinese military has applied advanced technology obtained from the civilian sector to develop state-of-the-art weapons. As a result, China was able to achieve technological revolution of its armed forces. China's emergence as a tech giant means that the democratic countries such as Japan and the US are in the verge of losing technological predominance. It affects us in various ways, but most notably in two ways. First, in terms of defense policy, countries like Japan and US are relying on their own technological edge to secure deterrence, even if the surrounding countries have a numerical superiority. Therefore, keeping technological superiority has critical importance from the defense policy expert point of view. Another way is in the change of diplomacy. In the past, advanced technology and infrastructure were exclusively owned by, provided for by democratic countries. These benefits can now be attained through authoritarian countries as well. This means that a country with a human rights violation, which in the past could not, is now able to achieve economic growth without having to embrace universal values such as freedom and democracy. The democratic countries such as Japan and the United States have to be more vocal about importance and benefit of freedom and democracy, as well as make extra effort to promote and spread universal value. Well, we need to take action and rectify the situation. First, in order to efficiently procure large quantities of advanced equipment, we need to manage cost and streamline the acquisition process more efficiently. We must also improve our handling of project management and oversee the entire life cycle of an equipment from manufacturing to its disposal. Additionally, in order to avoid losing our technological superiority completely, we need to take the following two steps. First, we should invest more in R&D. We need to increase funding for future technology, but not in a way that funds are spread widely, but by focusing on invest in promising future technology. At the same time, we should proactively adopt civilian technologies that are already advanced. Cooperation with allies and partners is indispensable in making use of our limited resources. The US, Australia, and the UK recently announced the launch of AUKUS, a new security framework to advance cooperation in areas such as cyber, AI, quantum technologies, underwater capabilities. ATLA is also very much interested in these fields of technology. Moreover, in order to realize the aforementioned measures, we plan to recruit experts from both in outside the government. These experts should have thorough knowledge of technological trend and the ability to identify potential applications to defense equipment. Second step is to enhance our protection of technology. Technological innovation is taking place every day and everywhere in private company, research and academic institutions, and in government too. Good examples are AI and DX, digital transformation, and any other technology could also potentially be the key to greater innovation. The future of R&D and Japan's defense industrial base depends on our ability to utilize networks and software such as cloud. Thus, protection of network security is an obvious prerequisite. In doing so, we must always be up to date on the latest trends in civilian technology and also have the ability to accurately assess them. We will also guard against technology theft and prevent the loss of civilian technology and human resources to other countries or entities. We will harden information security and implement a robust information protection mechanism. Furthermore, we need to maintain a resilient supply chain. Japan and the United States were industrialized nations with powerful manufacturing industries in the 20th century. However, as we've entered the 21st century, our competitive edge has gradually declined, not only in manufacturing, but also in a number of other industries. If we were to now procure defense equipment solely based on its cost, we would most likely end up with a final product composed of cheap components and manufactured in countries with security concerns. We need credible companies of Japan, United States, and partner countries to continue existing in the global supply chain. We should protect and at times nurture these companies so that they are able to generate sufficient profit to stay alive in the supply chain. We also need to watch out for these companies from getting acquired by countries with security concerns. By strengthening the industrial base and our ability to achieve advanced technology, Japan will be able to procure defense equipment that are compatible to technological innovation and necessary for future war fighting in a rapidly changing security environment. Well, we must also continue our effort to promote universal values. To do so, we will utilize various tools available, both diplomatic and in defense. To ensure for free and open Indo-Pacific, our agency, ATLA, will contribute to this effort by ways such as in the transfer of defense equipment to countries in the region. Next, I'd like to explain about the works of ATLA and what we are doing to support the aforementioned efforts. I'll start by discussing our approach to project management for defense equipment at ATLA. So far, we've selected 33 major defense equipment and assigned a project manager to each of these equipment for the purpose of effective project management. We are working to reduce cost in procurement, sustainment, and maintenance by ways such as procuring items in bulk with longer-term contract, adopting comprehensive contract for maintenance and sustainment of defense equipment. These and other measures such as trade-off studies, substitute plan studies, and reforming procurement framework are helping us direct limited resources into prioritized and much-needed projects in an efficient manner. Next is about our investment in research and development. The Japanese government as a whole has invested approximately 4 trillion and 100 billion yen in R&D in this fiscal year. And for the next fiscal year, the government is looking to make a budget request for about 4 trillion 400 billion yen, which will be a 7.4% increase from the previous year. In terms of allocation for R&D within MOD's budget, it's 210 billion yen for this fiscal year. And for the next fiscal year, we are requesting approximately 320 billion yen, a 50% increase from the previous year. Budget for R&D is being used to invest in game-changing technology such as space, cyber, and electromagnetic-related technology, AI, high-power microwave, and laser. To help find promising technology available in the private sector, we've started to recruit highly skilled engineers from outside the agency that are well-versed in advanced technology, such as AI or quantum technology. With respect to information security, several new initiatives are underway to ensure best practice for information security. For instance, this year, we established a new office within ATLA, Industrial Cyber Security Office, designed to promote various information security measures for Japan's defense industry. We are also considering the application of information security standards equivalent to that of the US government's NIST SP 800-171 to the Japanese defense industry under MOD's guidance. Concurrently, we've made a budget request to help subsidize small and medium-sized businesses seeking to make capital investments for improvement in information security. Up until now, it has been the practice in Japan that the information owned by defense contractor is handled and protected in accordance with their contractual terms agreed between MOD and the respective company. We believe that the stricter protocol is needed to ensure information security of the defense industry, regardless of whether the company is in a contractual relationship with MOD or not. Japanese government as a whole needs to discuss ways to better protect sensitive information owned not only by companies but also academic and research institutions. And to safeguard them from leakages, we also need to address the question of foreign students and researchers that have access to sensitive information. The Ministry of Defense is ready to play a constructive role in these discussions. In terms of our work in securing critical supply chain for the last 6 years, to get a better sense of defense supply chain, we at ATLA surveyed and studied the supply chain of over 63 defense equipment. In doing so, we looked to see, for instance, whether components made in foreign countries are being used or there are any potential risk of supply disruption caused by a company's withdrawal from the market. Any vulnerabilities we find, we need to treat them through cooperation with allies and partners. The survey was conducted on a voluntary basis, and the subject were prime contractors to fourth layer subcontractors. We plan to continue with the survey, possibly expand its scope, and make improvement as we go along, so that we can get an even better understanding of the defense supply chain. We also plan to assist businesses that are seeking to join the defense industry. Moreover, as a way to avoid possible disruption in the supply chain, ATLA will offer support to businesses planning to withdraw from the defense industry so they can find credible companies to succeed their businesses. Following the relaxation of the three principles on transfer of defense equipment and technology in April 2014, we at ATLA have been involved in the transfer of defense equipment and technology to countries in the Indo-Pacific. So far, we've succeeded in the transfer of TC-90 aircraft and warning and control radars to the Philippines, and parts of F-100 engine to the US. Three transfers are in line with Japan's security goal to ensure for a free and open Indo-Pacific. We believe that the government should play a greater role in promoting defense equipment transfers. Accordingly, we plan to contribute in this effort by conducting feasibility studies and engaging in promotion activities. We will also establish ties with local defense industries, defense ministries, and the armed forces. Just as the SDF and the US forces are working closely together in the Western Pacific, East China Sea, and in the South China Sea, we believe that the strong cooperation between Japan and the United States in the area of defense equipment and technology is also possible and necessary for our operation as well. The majority of US-made defense equipment that MOD procures are through foreign military sales. ATLA and the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, DSCA, are holding a regular and productive discussion to find ways to solve FMS-related problems and to streamline the FMS process. In the R&D field, several collaborative research projects are currently underway. In the past, Japan and the United States were able to succeed in the collaborative development and the manufacturing of SM-3 Block 2A. We hope to follow this success and find the next ambitious collaborative development project. We look forward to having active discussion with our US colleagues to further promote bilateral cooperation. As I mentioned before, MOD and DOD have been working closely to enhance the protection of defense technology and our defense industry. Currently, we are discussing ways to ensure the same level of security standards for both Japanese and US defense authorities. Information security is a prerequisite to deepening bilateral defense cooperation, including in sensitive areas. As such, we will endeavor to strengthen information protection in all areas related to defense. In terms of supply chain for defense hardware and software, Japan and the United States could potentially cooperate to overcome vulnerabilities in their respective supply chains. To do so, we must first conduct surveys and identify vulnerabilities in our respective defense industries. The next step would be to share information so that we could find a way to make up for each side's vulnerabilities. Sharing information could be a challenge given relations with private businesses. Yet we should still try and endeavor to cooperate in securing resilient and diverse supply chains. If Japan and the US are able to succeed in sharing information about our respective supply chain, we could consider including other like-minded countries in the discussion and possibly establish a safer global supply chain comprised by allies and partners in the future. Japanese contractors are currently providing maintenance and sustainment services for US forces in Japan, such as 7th Fleet, 3rd Maritime Expeditionary Force, and the 5th Air Force. In other words, Japan's defense industry is directly contributing to the maintenance and operational capabilities of the US military. We believe that this is significant in two ways. First, it strengthens both countries' response and deterrent capabilities. Secondly, it helps maintain Japanese domestic industrial bases with enough maintenance capabilities to support readiness of US forces in the West Pacific. We plan to allocate budget for the next fiscal year so we can continue to support Japanese businesses seeking to enter into work with the US military. Lastly, I wish to touch upon the cooperation in defense procurement. In order to defend the Japanese people and our homeland, we need to equip ourselves with the best possible defense equipment as quickly as possible. That is why, for the next fiscal year, we've requested budget for the procurement of the most advanced US defense equipment, namely F-35, SM-3, and SM-6. Information and data of these advanced equipment are highly classified and strictly protected by the US government. In order to procure these systems, we must conclude a number of arrangements on information security and also complete various complicated procedures. Close bilateral cooperation is indispensable in overcoming these challenges. Japanese public opinion toward the procurement of these expensive equipment is critical. As a democratic country, the government has the responsibility to explain to our taxpayers what the Japanese diet in a transparent manner the reason why we need to procure these equipment and the rationale for their prices. And to do so, we need the cooperation of US government and the defense industries to provide us with the necessary information. Bilateral cooperation is necessary not only in the procurement or co-development of defense equipment. It is required in all aspects of defense, such as in supply of defense components, conducting tests, or in use of technology to develop new equipment. The entire process requires close bilateral cooperation to materialize the benefit to both countries. At the 2+2 meeting held in 2019, Japan and the United States confirmed that our awareness at the strategic level is in sync. ATLA, MOD, and DOD all have the responsibility to carry out the strategies that our leaders agreed upon to ensure peace and security of the Indo-Pacific region, to strengthen and to sustain our technological and industrial bases, and the procurement of state-of-the-art equipment, as well as policies, agendas, and initiatives that I touched upon today, all important factors in achieving our common strategic goal and in securing deterrence. Pursuing these agendas requires constant close bilateral cooperation and continuous management. I look forward to working with my American friends to undertake the exciting task of alliance management and to deepen cooperation in defense procurement and technological advancement. Thank you very much for your attention.
So, Suzuki-san, thank you very much for your comments. I was thinking during your speech about what a younger version of you would think of your speech. When you joined the procurement office in MOD, nobody talked about cyber or exporting items to Southeast Asia or tapping into the private sector or things like artificial intelligence. It's really remarkable how much the US-Japan alliance has changed, because in those days, your predecessor would have mostly talked about FSX and US-Japan friction, and your talk was almost entirely about collaboration in a stressful security environment. So very impressive content, but also very interesting to think how much MOD has changed over your career and how much our alliance and Japan's role has changed in the world. I have a number of questions I'm receiving from the audience, but I want to ask a few so we can have a tie-down a little bit first. You stressed several times the importance of working with the private sector and also universities as competition shifts from platforms and systems and subsystems MOD knows well to areas like quantum and AI and so forth. And of course, that's the thinking in the Pentagon as well, but the culture is so different. You know, in Silicon Valley, the innovation is such an open process, and working with the Pentagon is such a headache because of all the security of information. The pace is slower, and it's a real challenge, actually, even though both our countries are innovating and developing new technology. In areas like AI and quantum, it's a challenge for the Defense Ministry or for the Pentagon. And I'm wondering, can you tell us, how is the reaction or reception from the private sector in Japan or from universities as the Defense Ministry and ATLA reach out to them and create new expertise to try to identify opportunities for projects in those new frontiers like AI? Are you finding people are saying, no, thank you? Are they cautious? Or do you see that the door is open and you have an opportunity? Mazu, first question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Green. And so actually, so we started kind of a new system, so-called finding for the kind of civilian technology, finding by MOD for civilian technology a few years ago. And there are, so some opinion regarding that. But actually, we could find some very positive, so ideas. So, which might be leading to the defense technology. So, in that sense, we have to make step by step to to be cooperative with the civilian side, civilian technology side, because so recent rapidly changing civilian technology might be could be a kind of game changer, in the future warfighting. So we have to be very stick to this, system in a way.
And the overall attitude of the public or the private sector towards defense ministry and GATI has really changed. I mean, in public opinion polls today, self-defense forces are considered the most respected institution in Japan. So it's not what it was 10, 20, or 30 years ago, but as you said, step by step to build those linkages with the private sector. You mentioned you said that the ATLA would like to find the next ambitious collaboration project with the United States, like SM3 Block 2. Were you talking mostly about missile defense, or do you have other ideas in undersea warfare or tactical aircraft or cyber that you can share with us? You mentioned in the context of missile defense in SM3 Block 2, but are you thinking beyond missile defense of areas for the next big ambitious collaborative project?
As for the bilateral possible development project, so we are still in discussion, and nothing has been decided yet. But to give the example of the area ATLA invest in, there are space, cyber, and electromagnetic domains, as well as the cutting-edge technology such as AI, high-powered microwave, and laser. I mentioned in the speech. We wish to start from the several co-research projects, in such area, and hopefully developed some of them into a co-development project in the near future. But repeatedly, so nothing has been decided yet.
One of the questions that was sent to me was about AUKUS, the Australia, UK, US security framework, and the decision on Australia's next submarine. And the person texted that before the US and UK, this is not my words, but before the US and UK stole the Australian submarine deal from France, France stole it from Japan. And it was sort of a joke, but I'm sure people in ATLA thought back on the time when Mitsubishi Heavy and ATLA were pitching the Soryu as the candidate. Looking back, are there lessons learned for Japan in terms of exports and international collaboration from the Australian submarine deal? Was it too big a meal to eat for the first date? Did you learn lessons in terms of how you market or work with defense industries and defense ministries? What kind of lessons learned from the submarine deal with Australia did you take away?
Well, yeah, we are learning, day by day regarding that issue, and not only in the case of Australian submarine, but also some other procurement of some other countries. But we did some achievement in TC-90 and some other radar to the Philippines, as I mentioned. So still we are now studying and learning something.
So you mentioned the TC-90 and other exports of systems to the Philippines, and Japan's also supported the Vietnamese Navy with patrol craft and so forth. And so has the United States, so has Australia, which has provided some capability. So has Korea, which has, through direct commercial sales, provided a lot of capability to Vietnam and the Philippines, and may build a diesel sub for Indonesia. Do you see a new mechanism where Japan and the U.S. can cooperate with other like-minded countries, maybe through the Quad, maybe with Korea? It seems to me it would be useful to have a kind of common picture and common strategy for capacity building among like-minded democratic allies, but how do you see it?
I think speaking of the capacity building, actually we could be cooperative, so bilaterally or trilaterally or in multilateral ways, and in terms of the kind of equipment transfer, so far I haven't heard of such a cooperation, but the kind of idea could be the kind of have a same methodology in a way, to the capacity building in that way, in the future. So I can deny that such possibility in terms of the equipment transfer.
Let me turn to our live audience, which is made up entirely of experts. And please raise your hand, and I'll call on you. I think that's Kevin Marr behind the mask. Kevin, if you could use it, it's a hike, but the microphone over there so people online can hear you. And I'll look for others after you who may have questions for Commissioner Suzuki.
Welcome back to Washington, Suzuki-san. I have a question. Traditionally, all countries face a dilemma in procurement between how do you get the most cost-effective, best equipment for the fight as opposed to supporting industry. And this is not a unique situation in Japan. The U.S. faces the same issue as all countries do. But I asked the question in terms of one of your largest programs that's on the horizon in early stages is the FX Next Generation Fighter. Any big project has a lot of risk, cost, schedule, performance, et cetera. But with the rapidly increasing threat from China, looking at a long-term expensive program like that, where do you see the balance between taking on the risk and how much leeway do you think Japan has in the face of these very serious Chinese threats over the next few years in shouldering that risk as opposed to doing something more cost-effective using some existing technologies?
So I think so. So now we are, facing the kind of a deteriorating security environment. Then we are pursuing necessary state-of-the-art equipment, such as F-35, SM-6, and SM-3, as I mentioned. This is to deal with the severe security environment. The balance between of course, in the cost effectiveness is important, and on the other hand, kind of transparency in cost is also important. That's why we are discussing with these issues with my counterparts, and so that's why we need. That's why bilateral cooperation is needed. In this issue, cost effectiveness, and also, of course, kind of to deal with the threat and the problem is important, but also to support these operations. We need some bilateral cooperation. So we have a lot of issues to talk about. So does this make sense to you?
There's a lot to juggle. You have to think about requirements, which are getting more and more challenging because of the threat. You have to think about industrial base, technology development, alliance issues, It's a lot to consider. In the case of the FX, for example, do you consider that an indigenous Japan project, or do you consider it a joint project with Japan in the lead? How do you think of the framework in terms of collaboration with the U.S. in defining requirements and developing the technology?
And speaking of FX, so our NDPG described this project as a kind of a Japan-led development with their international cooperation in sight, in view. So, in accordance with this policy, we are talking, we are coordinating with the United States and also the UK.
Other questions from the audience? If not, I have some from our online audience. So you mentioned that ATLA will have a policy to reach out to small or medium-sized high-tech industries that may be exiting the defense budget to give them some support and time to make sure they're not bought by an adversary or leave the marketplace. Do you have, someone asked a question about small and medium-sized enterprises. Do you have a strategy to bring in small and medium-sized enterprises into the defense business more and into cooperation with ATLA more? You mentioned the defensive side to keep small and medium-sized industries from leaving, but is there a strategy to bring in more small and medium-sized enterprises, including overseas, in the UK, US, Australia?
Yes, actually, we are, prioritizing the kind of inviting, small to medium-sized enterprise to, defense industries. So we are not only talking about the kind of protect, but also invite, to this field, to this industrial field. We'd like to welcome, new enterprise, with some ideas going to enter the defense industries. So, but of course, we could help them to enter this field by something, So we have to come up with new ideas, to facilitate this invitation.
So Japan, with ATLA playing a key role, is becoming a player in the international development among like-minded states of new capabilities, new technologies, systems. But when you compare Japan to Britain or Australia, for example, BAE, Lockheed, Boeing, these companies have thousands of employees in each other's country, thousands. But for the U.S., Japan, it's quite a limited number, actually. There aren't major production facilities for Japanese companies in the U.S. In defense. You have a few small presence for NEC and other companies with subsidiaries, but it doesn't compare to the U.S., UK, U.S., Australia, in terms of the just large number of corporate presence in each other's countries and also officials. ATLA has increased to, I understand, about 10 procurement officers working in the U.S., which is 1/10 of Australia or Britain. So I'm wondering, do you see a future for the U.S.-Japan defense industrial relationship and technology relationship that might look more like Britain or Australia, with a much deeper presence in each other's market, with a much expanded presence for procurement officers working FMS and technology? Or is that British and Australian model too ambitious for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, of course, so that is not decided by the government, but also decided by the kind of private sectors. Sure. So we have to consult with the private sectors very well. So, and then we'd like to take the appropriate course, to improve the current situation.
Do you think that general direction is the right direction for U.S.-Japan defense industrial relations? The direction meaning more integration, more presence in each other's markets, both ways, U.S. and Japan, more Japanese presence in the U.S., supporting DoD and Department of Homeland Security and so forth. So that kind of integration, do you think, is that a direction that makes sense from the MOD perspective?
It depends on the kind of a coordination, but so direction should be comfortable, right, with both sides.
There has to be a profit motive, which requires a lot of regulatory reforms and security of information, a lot of other things that you mentioned. I have a question also about, you spoke quite a bit about ATLA's role in managing supply chain security. And that struck me, and it struck Ben Self from the Mansfield Center, asked a question about it too. Is ATLA advising METI and the government on supply chain security and export controls, or is ATLA part of the process for defining which technologies are most important and which companies have to be most careful?
So ATLA, itself started to study the supply chain, but because of course we have to be cooperative with the METI too, so to get a better understanding of the supply chain.
But you're advising METI and others on the dual-use technologies that are most important from a national security perspective?
We should give the advice to each other.
I see. So it's not a formal institution organization. It's advice and consultation primarily.
At this stage.
Yeah. And I've noticed that one other person in the online audience asked about this, but in the debate right now for the presidency of the LDP, 3 of the 4 candidates, the 3 strongest candidates, are all advocating increasing defense spending. One candidate is advocating doubling defense spending to 2% of GDP. The question from the audience is, from ATLA's perspective, are you anticipating defense spending to continue increasing in the future?
Other kind of MOD and
I'm not asking you to endorse a candidate for the LDP presidential election, because then you'd have to come here as a visiting fellow or go to Georgetown again. So I don't want to get you fired, but is the assumption that defense spending will continue to increase?
So we need enough budget to complete our mission.
So you've endorsed all 4 candidates. Terrific. Suzuki-san, thank you. Your mission is really important. ATLA is in so many aspects of Japan's overall grand strategy, not just procurement and technology development, but relations with Southeast Asia, U.S.-Japan alliance, relations with Australia and Europe. And you have the perfect resume to do it, because you started in this procurement business, but of course you've done so much international and policy and defense planning work. So we're lucky, all of us, you're in the job, and lucky that you joined us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.